Okay, so we open on a young hero named Albus standing before a grave and thinking that the world is finally at peace now that he defeated the Demon King. But if he had just been a little faster, he could have saved so many more lives. The scene shifts to the kingdom of Alderia, where crowds are gathering at the royal castle for the departure ceremony of the chosen hero, and everyone is wondering if this guy can actually pull it off. One of the men steps up and reminds everyone that the prophecy is clear because when the Demon King rises, the chosen hero will also emerge to defeat him. And he declares that Albus is the one chosen by the heavens, so they should trust him fully. Meanwhile, the king is asking the Pope if Albus has arrived yet, and to his absolute horror, the Pope reports that the hero already left without anyone noticing. Cut to a girl nervously standing at the northern castle gate and trying to gather her courage to actually walk in. And one of the guards notices her frozen in place and asks if there is some invisible wall in front of her. She nervously starts introducing herself and reveals her name as Fiona, a cleric from the countryside who wants to join the hero's party. The guards tell her the selection ceremony is happening right now at the royal hall, so she better hurry in. But instead of rushing, Fiona looks down and admits she probably will not get chosen anyway. And even if she does, she will just be useless, because she is more useless than paper straws. The poor guard tries to reassure her, but she is convinced she will only embarrass herself if she goes in. And then, here is where it gets wild, because a carriage suddenly rolls by, and the driver reaches out and yanks Fiona onto it without any warning whatsoever. The guards think this is a daylight kidnapping and immediately start chasing after him. But the driver turns around and holds up his hero insignia to prove who he is, and the guards freeze in shock, realizing this is the actual chosen hero. Fiona is sitting there shaking and desperately trying to figure out what is even happening right now, but Albus stays completely calm and just invites her to join his party like he did not just grab a stranger off the street. Back at the royal hall, everything is descending into chaos while everyone waits for the hero to show up, and the Pope delivers the news that Albus said he would skip the ceremony entirely because it is a waste of his time. Spoiler alert, the king does not take this well. Inside the carriage, Fiona is still trembling with fear, and Albus tells her to stay calm, but she calls him a fraud and accuses him of trying to scam her because she is from the countryside. He tosses her his hero insignia and explains he received it from the archbishop when he was 6 years old, and Fiona realizes it is real before scolding him for throwing something that important so carelessly. Albus brushes this off and says time is more valuable to him than anything else, and tells her they will reach their destination by nightfall. He reveals that their destination is the Black Scale Peak, which is the home of the Black-Winged Dragon, the strongest S-rank monster in the entire region. Fiona is horrified that they are headed straight into danger instead of taking any kind of safer route, and Albus just casually calls it a shortcut. She looks at him like he is out of his mind and notices he is not even wearing proper armor, and when she asks about it, he explains he spent the budget on the horse and wagon because mobility matters more than gear. And yeah, this is the person she is trusting with her life right now. Fiona asks why he even kidnapped her in the first place, and Albus calmly asks if she dislikes people like him, which answers absolutely nothing. She is still confused and asks why he chose her specifically, and if they have even met before. And this is where Albus decides to dump the entire lore on her. He says that when he was 5 years old, he received a divine revelation from some sketchy dude claiming to be a messenger of God. And in the divine language, this messenger told him he was radiating main character energy and was going to defeat the Demon King. Classic origin story. So with that divine mission locked in, Albus trained every single day, determined to become the strongest, and after 10 years of grinding, he finally set out on his journey to defeat the Demon King. But here is where it gets messy, because he ended up losing hard, since the Demon King kept spamming instant death area attacks like a sweaty tryhard who has never touched grass in his life. Albus actually died during that battle, but then woke up again on the day of his departure and discovers something terrifying about himself. Turns out, every single time he dies, time resets back to the day of the departure ceremony, and he is stuck in this endless time loop, cursed with the power to rewind time upon death. Fiona is completely stunned by this, and asks if the loop will just keep going forever until he defeats the Demon King. And Albus tells her this is his 36th loop, and out of all those attempts, he has only defeated the Demon King once, with his fastest run, taking 5 years, 3 months, and 21 days. Fiona is shocked that he actually won before, and immediately asks why the loop is still repeating then. Albus explains that he went full reset mode because after winning he rushed back to his village only to hear the terrible news that his beloved dog Lucky had died 4 years into the journey. His whole obsession with speed started there because going slow and steady was not enough, and he realized that if he had moved faster, the king could still walk in a peaceful kingdom, and the world tree in the north would not have been burned, and so many lives could have been saved. This obsession took over completely, and every new record gave him a weird thrill. Fiona flat out tells him he is messed up. But before Albus can respond to that, he suddenly senses the black winged dragon flying overhead, and this is where things go sideways fast. Fiona freaks out and begs him to hide, but Albus tells her they are fighting it head on, using her magic, and hops off the wagon to draw the dragon's attention directly. Fiona recalls how, as a child, she always dreamed of helping the hero, but felt completely useless since her only real talent was a single spell. Albus yells at her to cast it, and she shocks even herself by knocking the enormous beast out cold with her sleep magic. With the dragon snoozing, Albus locates the weak spot on its neck and unleashes his dragon slashes until the creature is down for good. Afterward, he praises Fiona and reveals he actually first met her back in his 6th loop, and at first, he thought she was just another cleric, but discovering she had sleep magic changed everything, since clerics who can put dragons to sleep are crazy rare. He has had tons of companions across all his loops, but this is his genuine take because she is special, and he officially asks her to join his party. They move on, with Albus reflecting that this fight was their first real obstacle, and if the dragon had opened with fire breath, they would have been toast immediately, which means he estimates their current chances of success at around 60 to 70%. Fiona side-eyes him like he just said the most unhinged thing she has ever heard. After traveling a while, they arrive at their first town to rest, and Albus tells her that his previous best run was 5 years and 3 months, but this time, he is aiming for 3 years flat. He sells the dragon materials for 5,000 gold, and Fiona is absolutely hyped because she is finally escaping her potato-only diet. But Albus immediately warns her not to listen to the townspeople, because side quests are nothing but time wasters, and he points out villagers already complaining about lost cats and petty drama, insisting that ignoring all of it is the key to beating the Demon King. Fiona agrees, and he reminds her to stay locked on the main goal before heading to the weapon shop and leaving her behind. While waiting, Fiona overhears chatter about bandits attacking the western route and threatening the whole town, and then a boy approaches her asking if she is an adventurer. Fiona hesitates, but when the boy explains the bandits killed his dad and stole a pendant from him, her chest tightens and she promises to help. And then, before she can do anything, Albus appears out of nowhere and startles her so badly that the boy runs away. She explains the situation, but Albus refuses to get involved, and when she asks if he is really okay with just ignoring people suffering like that, he bluntly says he cannot handle every little problem and walks off. Little did she know this was not actually the end of that story. The next morning they head to the manor of the local lord, and the lord wastes zero time asking them straight up if they will handle the bandits terrorizing the area. Fiona fully expects Albus to say no again since he refused just yesterday, but to her complete shock he instantly agrees and her jaw basically drops because his mood did a full 180 overnight. He has an explanation ready though, because he says this was never about helping random villagers, and it is actually part of his shortcut plan, since the Lord controls a checkpoint up ahead and scoring a travel pass from him will save a ton of time on a faster route. When the Lord asks when they plan to start, Albus smirks and casually says, "It is probably already done." The scene cuts to the legendary mercenary squad known as Wolf Claws, absolutely destroying the bandits in battle like it is just another Tuesday for them. And once the fight is over, the captain confirms the job is finished and reminds them about the agreed payment. The townspeople watching are completely stunned because most of them have only heard of Wolf Claws in stories, and seeing them live is a massive shock. Albus shows up right after and proudly declares that he was the one who called them in, flexing hard and saying that when people rely on him, he can get their problems solved fast without wasting any time. Fiona is still confused and asks how he even managed to contact such a famous mercenary group, and Albus casually explains he had already arranged it beforehand. The captain of Wolf Claws walks up and asks if Albus is really the client, and Albus greets him like an old friend, while the captain stays skeptical and wonders how he even got their contact method, since that information is only given to trusted people. Albus explains that someone he knew once passed the info to him just in case, and in his head he remembers that in a past loop he met this same captain, and back then the man had offered to help him whenever he needed it. He was not sure if that connection would carry over into this loop, but the captain had promised they would always be willing to lend a hand, and trusting that memory, he went for it, and it worked. After paying the captain, the mercenaries leave, and Albus reveals to Fiona that they even retrieved a pendant belonging to the boy's father, and explains that in one of his earlier loops, he grew really close to wolf claws, and those bonds still feel precious to him even now. When they return the pendant to the boy, Fiona watches how Albus interacts with him, and thinks to herself that he really is a strange one, because he acts like he does not care about anyone, but deep down, he clearly cannot ignore people suffering right in front of him. The following day, Albus urges Fiona to pack up quickly, and she notices their luggage is suspiciously small considering they just made 5,000 gold. He admits they're completely broke again, because he spent every single coin hiring wolf claws, and Fiona is absolutely floored. But before she can argue, the same little boy comes running up and offers them whatever supplies they need for the journey, and Albus happily accepts, before explaining that the boy's family used to be successful merchants, so earning their goodwill might pay off later. Fiona watches this and gets annoyed, wondering if Albus only helped at all because it benefited him in the end. That night, his thoughts drift back to his peaceful childhood hometown, where everyone would work together to harvest the fields, and even though it was tough, backbreaking labor, the sense of unity made everything feel beautiful, and that simple warm memory had been one of his very first motivations to protect the world. Back in the present, they arrive at the next town, and Albus makes a beeline straight for the priests, bowing his head and expressing genuine gratitude for being chosen as the hero, and promising he will defeat the Demon King and restore peace. The priests are genuinely touched by his sincerity, and one of them even breaks tradition by granting him access to the holy water fountain, which is normally completely sealed off. And here is where it gets wild, because getting to this point was not exactly smooth, since they had to disguise themselves in grizzly bear fur and nearly stumble through dangerous monster territory just to reach the place. Without wasting a second, Albus rushes over, fills up barrels of holy water, and stacks them all onto the carriage while Fiona stares in shock at the sheer amount piling up. He explains that holy water repels monsters, and carrying it will drastically cut down their chances of being attacked, and Fiona starts brushing the holy water onto the horses before Albus stops her and says that method wastes it way too quickly. Instead, he installs an entire sprinkler system using barrels with holes that evenly distribute the holy water as they travel, and Fiona stares at him, genuinely unsure if this is genius or disrespectful. She asks if he has always been like this since childhood, and Albus immediately tells her it was a complete lie and that he cried easily and was never noble a day in his life. She asks for the real reason he keeps pushing himself this hard, and Albus explains that in the very beginning he acted entirely on a whim, because when someone told him he was the hero, he thought it would make life easy and fun with everyone spoiling him, and that defeating the Demon King would be simple. Fiona starts genuinely worrying if she made the right decision to follow someone this naive and selfish. But then, he says, this exact mindset is why he has failed so many times, and admits he carries a lot of regret now, and before Fiona can dig deeper, a horde of goblins suddenly surrounds them from every direction. And then it gets worse, because Albus reveals that goblins are actually smart enough to avoid the holy water entirely and shoot arrows from a safe distance instead. And just as Fiona urges him to escape, a massive troll appears directly in front of them and blocks their entire path. He calmly explains that trolls and goblins often team up where one provides raw strength and the other provides intelligence, and Fiona is losing her mind, reminding him this is absolutely not the time for a nature documentary while their holy water is running out fast. He suspects the horde must have a leader and figures that defeating the leader will scatter the rest, and then he spots the goblin commander watching smugly from a distance and laughing at his own big-brain strategy. The moment that goblin makes a single noise, Albus shoots him down without hesitating, and explains he has already memorized this exact formation from a past loop, since their tactics never change, and predicting them is easy. With the leader gone, the troll charges straight at the carriage, but Albus stays completely calm, splashes the creature with holy water, and cuts through its body while dodging its attacks effortlessly. As he fights, he flashes back to a previous loop where this same group of monsters ambushed his team, and he killed both the goblin leader and the troll, but everyone else died, including Fiona. Back in the present, he finishes the troll with a devastating kick from above. Then he finally tells her the truth, the real one. He keeps fighting because there is someone he wants to save. A full year passes since they left. and they travel steadily north toward the magical continent of Galoon, where the Demon King's castle is located. Fiona notices the nearby Lunan port on the map, but Albus tells her they are not taking a ship this time and plans to use a warp gate instead, which shocks her since she had no idea an ancient relic like that was even nearby. He warns her that great hardships may be waiting on the other side and asks if she will still come with him. And after a moment of hesitation, Fiona decides to keep going. They arrive at an old shrine and stand before the warp gate, while Albus explains it was placed by ancient wizards over 1,000 years ago and runs on limitless energy. But then, an old man appears behind them, out of nowhere, and introduces himself as the shrine's guardian, who has been protecting the gate for 40 years, recognizing Albus as the hero and saying he may use it, but has a dying wish he needs help with first. Before the old man can even explain his wish, Albus immediately grabs Fiona and makes a full sprint for the warp gate. The old man shuts it down instantly and tells him that was extremely rude. Our little speedrunner shrugs and says this trick works sometimes. Fiona says she feels bad and suggests they actually listen, and Albus turns to her and rattles off the entire quest chain the old man is about to pitch, because he has already lived through it before and wasted a full year on it. He recalls the hidden dungeons to the west, the flaming staff from a merchant in the south, the dungeon key, all of it, and starts kicking the ground in pure frustration, while the old man quietly says he just wants to see the jewel once. Albus turns toward him and addresses him by his full name and title, Marius the Wise Hermit Wizard, making the old man deeply confused about whether they have met before. He tells Marius that sometimes the things that matter most are closer than expected, like a simple flower, but Marius insists on telling his story anyway. He explains that when he was young, he fell in love with a woman named Cecile and chose to leave her behind to pursue magic, but promised he would return someday with the rainbow gem she always wanted to see. And now, decades later, he wishes to meet her one last time. And this is where things get completely unhinged, because while the old man is mid-story, Albus quietly drags Fiona behind some rocks and makes her dress up as Cecile to convince the old man to forget about the gem entirely. Fiona reluctantly plays along and steps out, and seeing her, Marius lights up with pure joy and apologizes for never keeping his promise. Acting as Cecile, Fiona gently tells him he does not need to bring the gem anymore and that he should forget about it. But then Marius starts doubting himself and wonders if Cecile was really the one he made that promise to, suddenly remembering it might actually have been the dancer Esmeralda instead. Albus immediately tells Fiona to change into Esmeralda's outfit, and she stares at him like he has completely lost his mind. Seeing the new outfit makes Marius overjoyed all over again, but then he realizes it might actually have been Mary from the gambling parlor instead. Fiona looks up slowly and asks exactly how big of a player this old man actually was before changing into Mary's outfit without another word. Marius is overjoyed once more, and Albus asks if he is satisfied now, and the old man thanks them and says it felt like reliving a dream. Marius admits that if he had stayed with one woman, maybe everything would have been different, but he sees his regrets as important parts of his journey and asks Albus what he thinks about that. Albus replies that he wants a life with absolutely no regrets and is chasing a perfect ending, and quietly recalls that despite always being in a rush, he genuinely enjoyed hearing Marius's wild stories in a past loop and hopes to hear them again someday. After Albus explains the whole time loop situation, the old man activates the warp gate, and Albus tells him to take care of his horse before walking through with Fiona. Marius watches them go and reflects on how strong Albus is before noticing something quietly sad in Fiona's eyes. But before he can say anything more, the two of them step through and teleport directly in front of the Demon King's castle. However, Albus gets stuck halfway through. He calls out for Fiona to help, and she looks at him, completely deadpan, and says maybe this is karma for how he has treated everyone along the way. She jokes about leaving him stuck in there for 10 hours, and Albus immediately starts panicking and complimenting how beautiful she looked in every single outfit before desperately trying to buy his way out. Fiona smirks and tells him she will make it 5 hours instead. Okay, so we pick back up with Albus recalling one of his past loops while they get their bearings outside the castle. He remembers one party member warning him that his sword is too chipped to keep using, and Albus knows it is worn down but says he has come too far with it and cannot change it now. Another friend jumps in and says his own helmet is falling apart, but insists it is priceless because it once belonged to a former hero and carries a spirit inside it, and he would never trade it for anything. Then a third member cuts in with a completely different take, arguing that investing in expensive gear is essential, and the more it costs, the more reliable it becomes, full stop. But Albus just smiles at all three of them and says that one way or another, they have all made it this far to the Demon King's castle together. Back in the present, Fiona is holding something in her hands that genuinely amazes her, and Albus asks to see it. After examining it, he explains, it is the Elvish magnifying glass, a magical artifact that reveals the skill level of whatever is reflected in it. She looks into it and says her level is 21, while his is 36, which does not surprise him at all, since they have been moving as fast as humanly possible. But here is where it gets awkward, because while reviewing the data, he notices a more detailed section showing stats like power, attack, magic, age, height, and weight, and his eyes linger just a little too long. Fiona snatches it out of his hands and yells that he absolutely should not be looking at that, then protests that it is not her fault she gained that much weight because the elf village food was genuinely delicious. Albus blinks and says he never mentioned anything about weight. She freezes, moving on. When she calms down and looks into the artifact again, she spots a blurry figure approaching fast from above, and the image reads, level 65. Before she can react, Albus shoves her aside and shouts that it is a manticore. They run, no hesitation, just legs. As they flee, we learn that 4 months have already passed since they arrived on the magical continent of Galan, and they traveled through the elf village on their way toward the Demon King's castle. After escaping the manticore, Fiona asks if it is finally time to head to the castle, and Albus replies that if they go right now, they will both die without question. Fiona points out that he is still in the loop, so dying just resets things, but Albus reveals the Demon King is level 150, and she goes completely silent. She asks if they can even beat something like that, and he says they cannot right now, stressing that leveling up is absolutely essential before they set foot inside. Looking at a map of the castle, he explains they need to train hard and collect the best weapons and armor scattered across the entire continent, and he mentions a nearby cave where they might find a magic wand that could seriously boost her power. But Fiona gets quiet and sad, and says she wants to keep her current staff because it was a gift from her master after her training ended, and she feels her master's presence in it, which gives her strength. Albus pulls out the elvish magnifying glass and scans the staff without a word, then reveals it only has a magic power of 15, making it basically useless. Fiona is stunned and accuses him of being cruel, and he replies that the numbers are the cruel ones, not him. At that moment, a memory floods his mind, and he recalls a past life where his entire group faced the Demon King with poor gear and got completely destroyed. Inside that castle, hopes and emotions and dreams mean absolutely nothing against the overwhelming power waiting inside. And then he declares that he wants to win, and there is nothing wrong with that. Fiona understands his point and decides to get stronger even if it means leaving her staff behind, saying she will carry her master's memory in her heart instead. Albus smiles and tells her to move, and Fiona thinks quietly to herself that not just her master's memory, but Albus's memories matter too. They continue their journey, crossing caves and dangerous seas and hidden dungeons until they are close to their destination. And then it gets wild, because 2 full years have passed, and a manticore is roaming the area and sneaks up directly behind Fiona. It lunges with a deafening roar, but she catches it effortlessly, and with a single movement of her new magic wand, she unleashes mystical chains that bind the creature completely and tells Albus it is time. Level 52. She is not the same nervous girl from the countryside anymore. Albus appears and unleashes a devastating spell called Curse of 1,000 Years with his new weapon, and the manticore gets absolutely obliterated, reduced to a skeleton on the spot. He proudly shows off the weapon and declares it the strongest of all, explaining it was made by combining multiple cursed weapons and armor together, but his sacred gauntlets let him resist the negative effects. Fiona recalls that 90% of his gear is cursed and starts feeling like something is deeply wrong with this man. He proudly shows off level 86 and boasts about having the highest attack stat in existence. But Fiona mentions that the dwarf who forged the weapon kept crying and laughing the entire time he was making it. Albus casually says the dwarf just did not want to think too hard about it. Both of them fix their eyes on the Demon King's castle looming ahead, and Albus declares he will defeat the Demon King with the power of darkness. Fiona stares at him and quietly wonders who exactly the real Demon Lord is here. Inside the vast Demon King's castle, General Valgo, known as the Unshakable Darkness, receives a report from a subordinate that the hero has arrived. He looks at them disdainfully and compares the hero to a worm that cannot possibly threaten him, but his face hardens immediately because letting insects anywhere near His Majesty's chamber is completely unacceptable. He starts running through his options out loud, wondering whether to crush the hero, burn him, or tear off his limbs and display them as a warning, and finally decides that the moment the hero steps into the room will be his absolute last. But just then, a hidden trapdoor silently opens behind him, and Albus appears with Fiona. Valgo turns and does not even have time to process what is happening before Albus charges and strikes him with his weapon, sending him flying and crashing violently into the wall like a ragdoll. The loud crash alerts the guards who come rushing in, but Albus clocks them and tells Fiona they have to keep moving. Despite being seriously wounded, Valgo drags himself upright with burning rage, gathers his last strength, and launches a powerful spell straight at them. But before it can connect, Fiona spins around and activates a magical barrier that absorbs the entire attack clean. The muscle brain Valgo collapses, and Albus moves forward, cutting through every enemy in their path with ease, while Fiona guards the rear. The guards are completely shaken by their general's defeat and cannot figure out what kind of weapon the hero is even using. They keep moving and dodging traps without slowing down, and the guards are baffled at how they keep finding secret paths nobody should know about. As they approach another chamber, Fiona remarks that things are going surprisingly smooth, and Albus says he has been here so many times that by now the place genuinely feels like his grandma's backyard. He suggests a short rest because the Demon King's chamber is just ahead, and Fiona nods. While resting, she breaks the silence and asks something that has been sitting on her mind for a while now, saying it may be late to ask, but she wants to know why out of all the possible party members, only the two of them are doing this together. Albus thinks for a moment and says he has traveled with many people across countless loops, but trying to move as fast as possible has caused too many problems, and in the end, he concluded this was simply better. He walks her through the whole history. His first group had two veterans, Lara, an elite warrior from the Southern Defense Corps, and Gina, a genius from the Royal Academy of Magic, both deadly in battle. But Lara moved entirely at his own pace and was impossible to manage, while Gina was obsessed with money and complained constantly about rewards, and in a journey built entirely around speed and saving resources, neither of them worked. After that, he tried a mercenary leader who was hard to convince, then a clever but emotionally unstable thief named Taco, then an astronomer too wrapped up in family drama, then a mysterious hermit, an elf with unclear motives, a wandering bard, a secret envoy from the eastern lands, and even a beast woman named none of them fit. Fiona listens quietly, and then asks why he chose her out of all those people. Albus says she is neither the best nor the worst, but her slightly low self-esteem makes her easy to persuade into doing what he needs without much resistance. Her jaw drops. She stands up with real anger in her eyes and starts to walk away, but after a few steps, she stops and admits quietly that maybe he is right, and she really is just an ordinary adventurer. And this is where it gets heavy. Albus asks if she has not noticed what she has actually accomplished, then tells her she has grown into someone he genuinely trusts to guard his back, and that she can heal even the most serious wounds with the precision of a trained priest, makes sharp decisions mid-battle, and uses her magic to support him at exactly the right moments every single time. He says she never loses hope and keeps pushing forward no matter how brutal the path gets, and that from the very beginning, he saw her as the best possible choice. He tells her to believe in herself because she is someone who refuses to quit, just like him. Fiona asks if he really expects her to believe all that, and Albus calmly tells her every word of it is true, and he is not lying. Her face lights up with genuine warmth, but Albus turns serious immediately and tells her it is time to go to the throne room. He explains on the way that the Demon King is unique even among demons because its wicked soul constantly possesses a new human vessel, allowing it to be resurrected again and again. And Fiona is shocked to hear the current Demon King was once a normal person. As she is still processing this, she suddenly realizes Albus has already launched himself at the Demon King without any warning whatsoever. She stares at the terrifying figure and watches as their enormous weapons crash together with a deafening collision while she stands frozen, unable to even step into a fight at that level. The Demon King speaks and calls Albus arrogant for arriving with only one companion, But Albus stays completely calm and says this is simply the result of carefully evaluating what he actually needs, and accuses the Demon King of not even understanding his own limits. The Demon King charges in fury, but Albus stops the attack just in time and explains that creating any distance means instant death spells, so close combat is the only viable strategy. The Demon King asks if this is their first meeting, and Albus replies that this is actually the 20th time. He swings his weapon and lands a heavy strike directly across the Demon King's face, then follows up with a powerful magic spell that summons a barrage of curse clubs and pounds him again and again. Fiona watches in complete awe as she realizes Albus is utterly dominating the fight, reading every movement perfectly and controlling the entire space around them better than his opponent. Until this moment, she had only half believed his stories about the loops, but seeing this, she finally understands that he has genuinely fought this battle not 10, but 20 times. The Demon King manages to halt one of his attacks and mutters that using magic at such close range is troublesome since it risks bouncing back and damaging his own armor, then casts a deflection spell and launches a devastating counter. Meanwhile, in the castle hall, Valgo is literally crawling toward the throne room like a beaten cockroach, vowing to destroy the intruders, but a massive explosion suddenly rocks the entire castle and stops him cold. Back at the battlefield, the Demon King is standing before a huge hole his own attack accidentally blasted open, annoyed that Albus has somehow gotten under his skin. Albus is lying unconscious in the rubble, looking like he has been auditioning for the role of a corpse, but his body is protected by a barrier Fiona threw up at the last possible second. The Demon King notices the barrier and acknowledges her skill before coldly remarking that crushing her would be easy, then approaches and reaches out toward her forehead before suddenly stopping dead silent. Nobody knows why. Albus regains consciousness and realizes the Demon King just used an attack he has never seen before across all 20 fights. No matter how many times he repeats this battle, the Demon King always manages to surprise him. But Albus remembers every single loop he has survived and pulls himself back onto his feet, wraps the shards of his broken cursed weapon around his fist, and calls out to the Demon King. The moment the Demon King turns, Albus is already in motion, launching a sneak attack that smashes him backward and shatters his helmet clean off. Fiona spots the jagged weapon fragments embedded in his fist and realizes what he has done to himself and calls out with real concern, but Albus tells her to stand back. He reminds her that if the Demon King's body is human, then it has the exact same weak points as any human, and says he is not interested in a clean or elegant victory. He drives his cursed fist directly into the Demon King's eye. Down, flat on the ground. Done. Albus turns to Fiona and tells her he has something important to say. They are both standing over the fallen Demon King, and she asks if it is finally over, but Albus stays completely silent. She notices his arm is badly injured from the curse, and moves to heal it immediately, but he still does not speak. After a long moment, he explains that the entire purpose of their journey was to narrow down companions and eliminate wasted time, and their current record is 3 years and 6 months, which is the shortest yet, but reducing it below 3 years feels impossible. He asks Fiona quietly if she thinks they made it in time. Before she can answer, the Demon King suddenly regains consciousness. They both turn to look, and Fiona says quietly that she feels like she knows the person underneath. Albus goes silent, and a memory surfaces from a past loop where Gina spotted dark smoke leaving the Demon King's body after their victory, while another teammate asked if they had really won. Back then, Albus approached the fallen body, ignoring warnings to stay back and remove the helmet, and everyone froze, seeing a completely normal human face staring back at them. The man begged them to finish him off and said he did not want to be possessed anymore and did not care what happened to him, but pleaded with them to save a child instead, someone chosen as the Demon King's next vessel, marked by the curse. Back in the present, Fiona's eyes go wide. She calls the Demon King Big Brother and rushes toward his body before anyone can stop her. Big Brother, her actual brother, is the vessel, and Albus already knew. He spins around to stop her. Too late! The possession snaps into place immediately, and Fiona is chosen as the Demon King's next vessel right in front of him. He draws his knife and tries to act, but Fiona moves first and severs his arm in one clean motion. Albus stares at what just happened and realizes he has failed to stop it in time again. Fiona, now possessed, locks eyes with him and says she missed her chance and could not kill him right away, then seems genuinely surprised that he has been repeating this journey over and over. Albus stares back with eyes burning and tells her not to call him by his name. The Demon King inside her speaks again and says, "It is surprising that the backup vessel was standing so close the entire time," and asks why Albus went through the trouble of bringing her here at all. Albus replies that every single time he defeats the Demon King, it possesses Fiona no matter where she is in the world and turns everything into chaos and bloodshed, and he draws his knife, saying he cannot allow that to happen. The Demon King inside her smirks and tells him to try and stop it. A memory surfaces of a wizard who once warned him that Fiona is the Demon King's vessel, but explained that a certain amount of time is needed for the possession to fully complete, and suggested that if the Demon King is defeated before Fiona becomes a full vessel, it might be possible to prevent it entirely. Coming back to the present, Albus realizes he has failed once again, and the gap was just too small. The Demon King tells him his efforts are meaningless, and that no matter how many times he tries, the outcome will always be the same. But Albus responds that he will save Fiona, no matter what. Then he activates his ultimate dimensional magic, and the world itself begins to shift. The Demon King stares in shock, realizing Albus has the power to rewind everything, and Albus declares that this time he will defeat the Demon King and save Fiona before she ever becomes the vessel. Time resets completely. We are back to the departure day. Fiona is standing nervously outside the royal palace, too scared to walk through the doors. Same as always. At that moment, Albus arrives in his carriage, just like he always does, and grabs her without any warning. The guard chases after him. He holds up his hero insignia, and then he turns to Fiona and asks her to join his party. Loop 37, starting now. If you liked the video, please drop a like and subscribe to stay tuned for the next part.